So I haven't even listened to this yet. It's a very, very impressive Irish person who heard that we were doing this, and his management sent us this sound clip, the introduction to Alan Clarke's Elephant from 1989.
Hello, I am legendary rock and roll singer and social crusader Bono of U2. I am here for this episode of The Good, The Pod, and The Ugly to introduce something near and dear to me. Communion wafers at Mass. Am I right? They are so good, but I can never get them outside of service when I am craving a SNSCK. That is why The Edge and I have created Commune 2 snack wafers. Not only are they blessed by a Catholic priest, they come in the following rocking flavors: 6-string cinnamon, on the cross and specified jalapeno. I still haven't found a sharper cheddar, and many more, including my favorite, ayahuasca ranch. You can find them at church thrift stores worldwide and look for free coupons when you buy your Pope Leo action figure.
Okay, I that is definitely. It goes on for another 2 minutes. I think it's all just trying to shill his thing, but we are seriously tackling Alan Clarke's 1989 Elephant on The Good, the Pod, and the Ugly.
No more bits. That's the last bit.
Yeah,
so good.
That's cinema, baby.
Sonny Corleone was a Long Island tough, big eggplant energy, but it wasn't enough. Quattro lived in a belly, but he got one in the brain. My feet exploded, Nessie driving RoboCop insane. Clyde had a gun for fighting, Bonnie wanted one for fun. They was only 24 and 25, and she got 26 shots when they died. And there were squibs when they died. There were squibs when
Welcome!
they died.
This is season 15 of The Good, the Pod, the Ugly, a film podcast where we traditionally pair films of notable actors and directors to get a better understanding of the person behind the art. But not doing that this season. Season 15, we are in Squib season.
Woo.
This is Thomas.
this is Ken.
I'm Ryan.
So we are pairing two films, and this is probably the worst pairing we've ever had. It's Alan Clarke's 1989, almost wordless film about sectarian violence in Northern Ireland, Elephant. We also covered Gus Van Sant's, not a remake, but same name and similar filmmaking style, Elephant, earlier this season. And we're pairing it with FX, which, if you have anything in common with these two movies, Thomas, I'm going to high-five you.
Yeah, I really earned my non-paycheck this week. But yeah, this episode we're just going to talk Elephant, 1989's Elephant. It does concern the Irish Troubles. So throughout the episode, I will be providing some something from the glossary, my Irish glossary that I've picked up over the years of just, some Irish terms that you might not understand as being someone outside of Ireland.
Very
Providing context for a dialogueless film. Great job.
Yes.
Yeah. And despite that cold open, if you've been following us on Squib season, we have been doing best squibs, worst squibs, and having awards. But similar to the Gus Van Sant's Elephant, I'm not going to do that this episode because the material doesn't really warrant it.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, so 1989, previously on the podcast from that year, we've covered Always and Last Crusade.
Okay, all right.
Pink Cadillac.
Okay.
Time to Kill.
What?
Right? Isn't that 89? Didn't we cover that?
Did we do Time to Kill?
I thought we did.
Oh.
In the
That's
Schumacher
a
season?
That's
We
a
definitely
Schumacher.
did She-Devil.
Oh, good
Woo!
Lord.
Vampire's Kiss.
Yeah.
And my favorite, Dial Code.
Santa.
Game Over, Pierre Noel, Deadly Games, 3615 Dial Code, Father Christmas. It's that great French Rambo / Home Alone.
A great year for movies, plus Pink Cadillac and She-Devil.
Mm.
And Always.
Yeah, Always is the worst of those. My God.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What's your relationships with Alan Clarke films?
Me? Well, I'll start. In the late 90s, the Northwest Film Center did a retrospective. They included a lot of his more, I don't want to say infamous, but Alan Clarke, he was worked a long time in the BBC making primarily short films. But they had like this one, Contact, The Firm, Made in Britain, and a couple others, and I was just floored by it. And I remember watching Elephant at the time, and it's one that's stuck with me since, about almost 25, almost 30 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going into watching his version of it. I was already down for it. How about you guys?
I watched, I guess, Scum, Made in Britain, this, and The Firm a few years back, around maybe the time we covered the 4x4 with our first 4x4 with Harmony Korine, because he had said that he was inspired by some Clarke.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, we'll get to reactions and talk maybe a little bit about his other films later in the podcast. But Ryan, how about you?
I think I had heard the name Alan Clarke before, but I had never heard of this movie. I'd heard of Made in Britain, but I didn't know he made that one. And so normally I have at least some kind of tangential knowledge or like a plot summary in my mind when we pick movies. But this time I decided, since I didn't know anything about it, to just go in completely cold, not learning anything about Clarke or the film before seeing it.
That's
wow.
awesome.
Yeah, it was a trip.
Yeah.
Ken, I think for context, when you saw it at a retrospective or when you see something like this at a film festival, you would get like an artist statement to work from or some sort of explanatory text with did that happen with the screening you saw?
Yeah, I mean, it was in a newsletter that they sent out, and that's something that's printed on paper for you Zoomers. My grandparents-in-law were members of the Northwest Film Center, and they got a bunch of tickets that people go with them. So Jack's mom and I and her grandparents went and watched all of these. And her grandfather, Jerry Baum, was very much in line with Alan Clarke's view of the world, considered himself a borderline anarchist.
Mm-hmm.
Very much thought that the people at the lowest ends of the margin, the socioeconomic scale, do not get enough airtime and stories and dramas. So he was all in on this. Yeah, and a lot of the films in this retrospective, and looking back, I was doing some. I watched some documentaries and read up on Clarke. That Made in Britain, the Tim Roth one, was the first time he used the Steadicam, which he had used, worked with somebody else, and also had seen The Shining, obviously. But the Steadicam would continually become an important part of how he made his films. The follow shot that I sent you guys, the link of that little YouTube video, became more and more prevalent in his films as he went along. And most of his subsequent films start with the camera following somebody. It gives you a sense of a place and time, etc. But Elephant's really like the final thesis, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. Let's just go and pepper this in. For you, Ken, Irish twins. Irish twins are children born within a calendar year of each other. So they go from nursing at their mother's breast to drinking bottled whiskey around the same time, causing a drain on the household whiskey supply. The term was made popular in the late 70s and into the 80s by the Ripley's double malt ads, and that contained the double malt Irish twins, humorously crashing objects such as tandem bicycles, kayaks that flipped upside down for displaying long times, using a two-person saw to open up parking meters, and other fun two-person activities to the tune of Double Your Pleasure is Waiting for You. So that was Irish twins. If you heard some of these phrases before and you just weren't kind of embarrassed to even look them up, this is a safe space for you.
I feel already like I'm learning more about the homeland of my people, Thomas. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So this movie, I was surprised to see, was produced by Danny Boyle.
That's right.
So Clarke was born in 1954 and he died in 1990 of cancer, lung cancer, if I remember right.
Yeah, this is one of his very last films.
And so just to sidetrack on Boyle just a little bit, because I thought he was a Gen Xer, like, just because when his movie started coming out, I thought he had like the trajectory more of R2 Gen X directors of Nolan and Aronofsky.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he was born in 56. He went into directing theater right out of college in 82. So he's a geezer, right? Like in 87, he started working for the BBC Northern Ireland, which was the people or the organization that would produce this film, and he was the producer on it. And Shallow Grave wasn't until 94. So yeah, he spent a lot of time, I guess, in the industry prior to doing his first feature.
One of the things I watched this morning was an episode of Open Air from the BBC, which was a call-in show.
Uh-huh.
And it was about Elephant, which aired the night before. This was on the 26th of January, 1989. And they had Alan Clarke on the phone from Los Angeles. During his last year, he was trying to get some Hollywood stuff because the way the BBC was doing things was changing, et cetera, et cetera. After the phone segment, Danny Boyle was there in person as a producer, also answering phone calls from a lot of people who were extremely upset over Elephant. And then, they fit in a couple loved it's from callers, but most of them and everybody from Ireland that called in was absolutely horrified and thought it was terrible.
Yeah.
Northern Ireland or Ireland?
They were all from Belfast. So Northern
Ireland. Yeah. I just, some disambiguation because those are two separate entities.
Yeah, no, definitely.
For the time being.
And we should probably go over what this movie's about. It's not a plot. It's 18 segments of murder. And it's not explicitly said it's Ireland. There's almost no dialogue whatsoever. Many of them are, like I said, the tracking shots or the follow shots. And that is the whole movie. And many of the deaths are taken from actual murders that happened. And they did a lot of research over that. They tried not to make it super specific. A lot of people wanted context.
Yeah.
In the movie, they wanted context. And Alan Clarke, it's interesting watching a documentary about him that everybody says he wasn't that articulate when directing, but he knew how to get from people the performances and the look that ended up being his movies. Danny Boyle was actually a much more articulate defender of the film and said that the second you give it specificity or say in the sectarian conflict, this person is from that side and that person's on the other side, then you start getting to conversations about whether it's justified or not. If one of them is one side, then you're going to say, well, yeah, but the other side did this. So stripping all of that away, stripping away witnesses, just making it an increasingly numbness to the horror was what they were going for. And a lot of people wanted their hands held, I think, a little bit.
Any.
The lack of context must have been very interesting, and it sounds like it might lead to a reaction, which we haven't gotten to.
Yeah, it's true.
I believe that there's 27 deaths in it, if I remember correctly. But I remember hearing somewhere along the way that there was dialogue, like there was a script with dialogue, and then that got stripped away at some point. Did you any of your research find that to be true, Ken?
Yeah, and it was one of the more difficult creative decisions that Clarke made because he was always a screenwriter's director. He would never change a word of the scripts because that's a very British thing where the word is the thing. In America, we have the director is the thing. And as he went along in the 80s and he really got into the subjective, objective points of view, and Elephant was kind of like the final part of him stripping away the word and then becoming kind of almost an auteur, where it became his medium as a director, not a conduit for what was written. And he had a very difficult time coming to terms with that, but obviously it ended up being this movie that we're talking about 40 odd years later.
So the plot, one thing that's consistent throughout it until it doesn't become consistent, and it's a curious part to me watching this for the third or fourth time, is every time somebody gets shot, so you don't know who's going to be shot. like if you follow somebody, that might not be the shooter. Is that true? Or is it, oh, we're always following the shooter?
No, because like the fourth segment is the guy with the beard walking through what looks like an abandoned factory of some
Warehouse?
kind. Yeah.
Is that the
And-
bathroom
and-
shotgun?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you are not sure. And then it is immediately followed, because I think the first four are all we follow the killer, and then the fifth one is when you're on that walking path.
The pedestrian
You're following
trail.
the-
Yeah,
yeah,
they pass
and-
somebody.
Yeah,
Two
and then-
people walking.
so you realize that you're following the victim, not the killer. And that was the sequencing is very interesting. It's almost sequenced like you would have to sequence a record album,
Yeah.
if you think about it that way. And how if they had been in a different order, it might not have been as effective, not to get to reactions.
Yeah,
Well, and it's-
we're not there yet.
It's almost
Yeah.
like a murder mixtape. Like, you know.
Alternate title.
Well, you know what could happen? So many episodes ago during the, I believe, it'd have to be during the Streets of Fire season, I had started watching Doubt, and somehow my DVD player had a random function, like a random play chapter function.
Wow.
And so I started the movie, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting place to start. And then I became, like, maybe 15 minutes in, so confused. Like, by the time I got to the third or fourth chapter jump, and I was like, I don't think this is right. And I believe my partner, Lee, she said, yeah, I've seen this before. This isn't right. This isn't how I remember it. And so, yeah, if you did that with this film, I don't know. Again, not a reaction, just a statement. I'm not sure that you would know that it was redone.
Mhm.
That if you put this on random between how many did you say, Ken? Like
18?
18 scenes. I'm not sure if you would know which one was the opening and which one was the.
Oh, I
Which
see
one
what
would-
you're saying.
Though the first and the bookends might be like the opening seems like it is a strong opening, and the ending seems like it might be a strong ending.
Yeah,
to my
the
humble
execution
opinion.
style at the end definitely had to be the ending from the start, I would think.
But every time you're following or walking with somebody, they might be a victim, they might be a shooter. Every time somebody gets shot, there's not always a squib, but every time you see somebody get shot, you see a person leave. Same formula. Every time that person leaves, and then except for one occasion, you cut back to the person who's been shot and see them dead for a while.
It
Mhm.
lingers. Yeah.
And for some reason, there's a time where there's like a car idling. There's a lot of cars idling, and people get out. Two people running away. One shoots him with a shotgun, and the other one goes and shoots him with the pistol and finish him off. There's no squib, and there's no cutback on that one.
Yeah.
On the chase, but for some reason, but in every other instance, there is.
Yeah. All steady cam follow shots, following people. As we saw in the essay, when you follow them, it's not subjective or objective.
I don't. So that was the essay we watched was very interesting. I'm not going to say that this film theorist, who certainly knows a lot more probably than I do about movies, is wrong. But personally, when I'm following someone with the camera just behind their back and we're walking forward, that is when I most identify with the character. So the idea that this isn't subjective or objective was, for me, counter to my experience, where I never feel like I'm more with a character than when you're seeing the back of their head and they're off living their life.
We
Now
know
that-
that Ken likes to follow people, but I think what you're saying, Ryan, is that like if it's like an over the shoulder shot,
Yeah.
or if their head's blocking you, then you're mostly like that's when you feel most identified with a actor's portrayal of a character on screen.
Yeah, because you're just experiencing the world how they experience it. And I feel like that is the most you can ever learn about someone in a movie.
What about a POV? Like, what's the movie that you like where the guy's just running around shooting shit? And
Hardcore
falling?
Henry.
Yeah. What about Hardcore Henry?
I've never seen that, but I have seen several POV films. One of the reasons why that was abandoned largely in the early 50s was it was considered to be kind of counterintuitive. It's so disorienting to be in the POV that most directors decided it didn't work. For me, it doesn't work, but I grew up watching movies before first-person shooters. It's possible that in a post-first-person shooter world, that is how people, maybe Jack does feel like Henry when he's getting hardcore.
That's a weird way of phrasing that.
Yeah.
I always felt that the POV shot was extremely limiting because it has no peripheral vision. Like, I have eyeballs, you have eyeballs.
Right.
I'm not just looking at something
Most people
in the square.
do, but not everybody.
Exactly. But you have peripheral vision, mostly to the side, but also up and down. And the POV just never works. It just makes you realize that you're in a movie.
Right.
So when Polanski made Chinatown, I know Polanski's canceled now, but I'm going to bring up Chinatown, is he did a lot of following, but it was like over the shoulder, like Thomas was saying. And I feel that is a more effective way of doing a POV. But what we're talking about with following is like you're a few steps behind these people and following them. So it's not exactly in their shoes because you're seeing their shoes, for one thing.
A great example of a movie where the follow-on makes me really identify the characters. Whenever Adonis Creed is walking into the ring in the film series Creed, you're normally following the back of his head and he's surrounded by the screaming fans and the journalists. And it's really just like a reminder of how insane this person's life is, that this is what they do and this is how they do it.
So you're seeing the peripheral around the person, like, and you're in the environment with them is maybe what I'm catching. Cool.
Yeah.
I think it's time to explain what an Irish goodbye is. The Irish goodbye is when you leave a function early without announcing your exit. Get into a motor vehicle and wrap that motor vehicle around a telephone pole after hitting a stray dog and or mistaking a shadow for an old woman lying in the street. Irish goodbye also covers abandoning that vehicle to go see what bars are still serving nearby within stumbling distance. So Irish goodbye.
If you ever want an entertaining hour or so, pull up the police scanner activity from Boston on St. Patrick's Day. And you will read some wild and amazing stories of Irish goodbyes and more.
So the Troubles, does anybody want to take a stab at what the Troubles were? To give this movie context, I think the most fascinating thing about this is we are 20 odd years away from relative peace, having solved the Troubles, or at least gotten past them. Thomas, you've been doing some Irish research.
I only know, I know about isn't Trouble the game with the with like a guy inside of like a little container and you push it and it's a lot like Porcheesy?
I thought you were going to go with the little fuzzy thing from Star Trek.
There was a movie called Double Trouble.
God. I can speak a little bit about the Troubles, though I'm certainly not an expert. So the original rebellion, and not the original, but the first modern rebellion against the British rule in Northern Ireland started in the 1920s and ran pretty hot and heavy for a while. And then the violence cooled down. The rebellion actually never stopped, as I understand it, but it flared up again in the mid 70s and continued through a good deal of the 80s. Particularly when the British, there had been a lot of Irish terrorism in the 60s and 70s. And I believe in the 70s is when the British Army moved into Dublin. And then things got very, very violent and very hairy. Yeah.
At the time of the making of Elephant, during that almost 20-year span, over 2,000 people died in sectarian violence. So this is the world that they were making that movie in and about.
And I guess when I think about the Troubles, I think about bombs and car bombs. But maybe I'm mistaken with that.
So the bombs were how they, and there's a great Hulu series, by the way, called Say Nothing that does a very good job of looking over this historical period dramatically. But the bombs were what they used to terrorize British people on British soil. So they would go across the pond and blow up stuff in London and other parts of England with bombs. And then they carried out assassinations in Ireland mostly.
Excellent.
More targeted. Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's 2 days of the week that matter, Bloody Sunday and Good Friday, right?
Yes, I don't know the context for Good Friday, but Bloody Sunday was when the British military opened fire on a peaceful protest that was being led by a Catholic priest that was going through Belfast.
Got to say it with an accent.
Nope, can't do the Northern Irish accent. Is really crazy. I'm not going to even try.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad there was a computer program for Bono, not AI. Trust me, I wrote it down. I tried. It would not have been good.
No, the computer delivering the speech was magnificent.
I would like to talk about the technical part of this beyond the Steadicam part, which is this might be a lodestar. Yeah, influenced generations of other filmmakers. But one thing that Van Sant borrowed was in his entire Death trilogy was the ambient noise, just the sound of traffic, the sound of a city. Obviously, the ADR of some of the footsteps are a little comical in a few points, unintentionally. But it really just sounds like a generic city street at any time. Every time it goes there, there's none of the turning it down or making it sound pretty.
Yeah, it's the aesthetic overall is very startling and effective for how simple it really is.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that Clarke died when he did, because the bootlegs of the vinyl soundtrack for this were really taking off. And if he had just gotten a deal with a Sony or BMG or somebody to distribute the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Who was the who did the music for this?
What music? Cars?
The band Cars?
Yes, the Cars. Rick Ocasek.
How about John Cage, maybe?
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Yes.
And watching the British talk show and having Danny Boyle and Clarke really defend themselves, but just how well they stand up. I just think about 2025. If someone made something controversial and somebody was allowed to talk to them in any way, that it would not be as nice. These are people who are talking about how upsetting the movie was, how bad they thought it was, but they're being respectful the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of nice to hear in 2025 someone really hating something, but kind of being nice about it.
Do you think that's just a difference between British people and freedom-loving Americans?
I think partially, but I also think now people are so much in their own little siloed vacuum that when they have these opinions that they get ratcheted up to 10 really quick, because there's so much more people telling them they're right and then making them even more agitated. But that's neither here nor there.
Leprechauns?
Yeah.
Leprechauns are Irish short kings known for their fighting tendencies, at least in college. Occasionally they're found in our hoods and out in space. They're an invasive species from Ireland that were originally bred to maintain the gold standard in pot legalization, most notoriously from the paramilitary group, by the paramilitary group known as Me Lucky Charms, with their flag of a St. Patrick's snake chopped up in the words, "Come and take them."
Oh,
good Lord.
This is the best bits episode. I don't know what you guys were thinking, but this is all the best bits.
Well, I was thinking, I watched that video of the elephant side by side, both movies. And I was thinking about Boyle talking about taking all the context out. And the second that you start putting it in, that it starts to give either motivations or like the context that people want to have their hands held. And how many times in Van Sant's Elephant, which I think is a masterpiece, but he does kind of get close to it, and he flirts with it a lot more than Clarke does here.
Mm-hmm.
But similarly pulls back and really leaves you in a world where there is none.
Unlike Clarke's film, I would venture that if you watched all of Van Sant's Elephant, you would know what you were watching. You would understand what the film was about, which I can't say is necessarily, I think that's, I guess, what Clarke and Boyle risked by removing all the context.
But they didn't because of when the film was released.
Mhm.
Like they did for, a, I don't know, time capsule, burying the film and then having it retrieved 1,000 years from now. Yes, you wouldn't know exactly what you were watching unless maybe you would. And I guess that's what a reaction is.
I also think that this movie, to get into reaction, I think this movie is better now than it was when it came out because of the lack of context. And I think it's the building of the violence and how by the end of the movie you're kind of numb to it, you're kind of used to it, and it's the internal struggle of realizing what it's doing while it's actually doing it. You could apply it to so many other conflicts or humanitarian disasters that we just kind of get used to. There's a couple going on right now in the world in 2025.
I think more than a couple, but yes.
Yeah, but just that feeling of, I hear stuff on the news that's happened, like in Gaza, for instance, and you're like, holy shit, that's just as bad as the stuff last year when there are hundreds of thousands of people on the street. But we've become kind of numb to it. And I think that universal sense of numbness over this violence is the greatest legacy of this film, because I think it could still be watched in another 30 years and it will sadly still apply to something happening in that time.
Well, I think I guess look at this outside of for there to be at some level like a conflict or to call it the Troubles in Ireland, but like in any, like there's like a layer of politicalization that happens on top of what you're seeing or what you just kind of said there, Ken. And for me, it's even more stripped apart than that.
Yeah.
Right. Where it gets down to like what I would consider a Quaker understanding of violence, which is it's never good.
Wow.
And so when you strip it down that much, if you're watching this if you're watching this out of context for the Troubles, killing somebody is killing somebody. Like that is ending a life.
Yeah.
But it's also something you're seeing on film, right? So it's not a real killing. It's a simulation that
yes, this is not a snuff film. This is not an 8mm film, Faces of Death style.
But when you and I'm just speaking for myself, but truly stripped of meaning, or of context, which to me provides the meaning, this is just nihilistic. This is probably the most nihilistic thing I've ever seen. And I think whether you receive it as something like a heroin experience or something closer to pornography is really based on who you are and what you like. If a lot of movies enjoy watching people get shot, we're watching several of those movies for the series. Mm-hmm. And without the context, I don't know. There's nothing. And if this was the goal of the film, and maybe it was one of Clarke's goals, then I think it's brilliant. But without the context, you do not know how to react to these killings. And there's no reason to think this isn't a badass assassin movie,
What? No, there's absolutely a reason not to think it's a badass assassin. Have you seen a badass assassin movie and then seen this film? They do not look or feel anything like each other.
I've seen many sections from films about assassins who are the cool guy that we're following, where the killings go down in a similar fashion. And there's just a lot of context around the assassin movie to say, hey, this guy's cool, and it doesn't mean anything when he shoots these guys because we think he's cool. But to me, there's nothing in this that tells me how to receive it. And I did think it was upsettingly nihilistic and numbing, but I don't think there's anything in here to say. I think that as an authorial work, if it's intended to make you feel something about the Troubles, then outside of time, it's a total failure.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, well, let me ask you this. When they cut back to the person who's dead, did you start jerking it? Because or did you high five yourself? You're like, yeah, fuck yeah, that person's dead.
I didn't receive it as pornography, Thomas. I'm talking about like someone
who
might like
but there's an
Henry,
intention there. There's an intention there to cut back to the dead person and see the dead person.
Yes, and I do not believe that the images shown carry a moral weight. You're just seeing something happen.
Well, whose whose job is it to carry that moral weight? I mean, I think the point of the movie is to not tell you, but to kind of leave space for you to explore in yourself how you feel about what you are seeing. And we are like you said, we are watching a lot of movies where like the Gun Fu and John Wick. We're gonna be watching RoboCop soon. I mean, all that stuff is hyper violent and funny on some level and transgressive in a way where we don't feel morally culpable. And to watch something like this amidst this season is really was really sobering for me anyway.
Yeah, I thought it was a great movie. I thought it was a very effective, transgressive art piece. But I can't receive it as a political work. I walked in cold knowing nothing about it, and there was nothing in there to tell me what I was watching. I did not know it was about the Troubles until after it ended. And then it was like, oh, I can see how that makes sense. But what you were saying about Boyle and Clarke cutting the context out of it, to me, that's an act of cowardice. That's just saying, like, I don't have the balls to make a statement, so I'm going to leave it out.
But making a statement is taking a side. Like I said, every time someone from Belfast said, I've lived through these murders. How come you don't have a name and a date before each murder, so we know the person that's getting killed? And the second you do that, you're really holding the hands of the viewer and leading them to a place that you want them to go to. And I think the great thing about this is that it does not do that at all.
I somewhat agree. And if the purpose of this film was to meditate on the nature of violence in cinema, then I would think it was very effective. It's the attachment of a political valence that's outside of the narrative. And the only way you can understand is by listening to the director or the producer tell you what the movie's about. That to me is just a complete failure of art. Art should stand on its own and say something by itself.
But it's just like having someone watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then they're terrified and whatnot. Then you tell them, it was a metaphor for the Vietnam War. Nobody cares about that anymore. But it's how you receive the movie says a lot about the art of the movie and also about your expectations when it comes to violence.
Right, and it's fascinating that we tucked the auteur theory into the description of the show this week because I think if a dude has something to say in a movie, then he should put it in the movie. And if he doesn't want to say anything about it, leave it out. I think
what you're fixating on, what I'm hearing is the difference in what you're fixating on, Ryan, is that you believe that Clarke has a message or is too chicken shit to say it or doesn't have a message. And I think Ken is saying he does have a message. That message is not necessarily the political message you like of pro or con in this instance.
Violence is terrible as a message. Gus Van Sant doesn't take a point of view on school shootings, but the way it's portrayed and the way the context is laced in, we can say, like, school shootings are terrible. And it doesn't matter if the guy who's doing the shooting is, we can empathize with.
But one of the problems, and I don't think it's a great film, I think Clarke's Elephant's far superior to Gus Van Sant. Thank you. GVS's. And I think what I always bump up against in the later Elephant is the dialogue and is trying to seemingly giving attribution to the shooters. Mm-hmm. I feel a little bit less that way than more recently, but I do feel like there is so much that Van Sant incorporates that because of that context, then it leads to an idea of, this is causal versus this is coincidence or associated with.
Yeah, you guys, for the purposes of a good conversation, which I agree with, asked me not to watch Van Sant's Elephant before recording. But what I remember is that I felt like people were trying to attach meaning to those scenes, the homosexual encounter or the video game playing in the movie. I thought part of the point was like, these are just teenage boys who are doing this. These could be any kids. But again, I haven't seen it since it came out, so I could be misremembering those specific scenes and whether there's like a
I mean, one of the shooters is bullied, right? If I remember right, he gets like
Yeah.
spit wads shot at him. So there is more to it than just this is any random child
Yeah.
out there.
Well,
It's not weapons.
We also see other
Spoiler for
characters.
weapons.
We also see other characters get bullied who do not end up being shooters, right?
I don't remember that, but
Yeah, the girl. With
There's
the
the awkward
the
looking
library.
girl going
okay.
through an adolescent phase. So I just, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, so I'm not trying to persuade you otherwise. But that was not what I walked away with from that one.
Jack, you were the one who recommended this, right?
We lost him.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll edit him out. I'm getting good at that.
Bummer.
No, I'm literally lost him. I think he had like an aneurysm or something. He's lying on the floor dead. Like, I can't stop recording, right? I'll
No,
call
I'm
an
with the
ambulance
show.
afterwards.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
I'll be fine. Still twitching.
it's gonna be terrible when that's actually the case. Well, something you might like then, Ryan, is prior to this film, he did something similar, but with junkies, if I remember right, in England. And so it's a gritty film that follows that. Remind me, what other films of his have you seen?
Clark's?
None, right?
None. No, this was
Okay.
my first exposure.
Yeah, it's not mock documentary style. It's not Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer or The Office. But there is a very gritty, intimate feel to his other films that are narrative based, but not exactly narrative based in like that are very much episodic or following a character around versus theological, like a plot leading to some big finale.
Right.
Yeah, he's very much of, like, when we talk in America, of those directors who came up in the 50s, like Sidney Lumet, John Frankenheimer, Robert Aldrich, that they came up in the theater stage of live TV. And in Britain, there was a wave of these directors, maybe a generation removed, in the 70s and early 80s, where they would make all these little short films or plays for the BBC. So Clarke made some 40-odd films, but as far as feature length, I think he made 3, and one of them was a remake of Scum, which was banned from the BBC, so they just turned it into a feature-length film. Both are great. He only made 3 feature-length films. He was in Hollywood when he last year of his life trying to get stuff together, which is kind of sad, thinking of somebody who was so kitchen sink and script oriented would go to Hollywood and think that was the answer.
Yeah.
Which says a lot about the state of British TV at the time, because he was like one of the acknowledged masters of that short film, almost plays from the 70s and 80s and that heyday.
And to be clear, I think this is an amazing movie. I would be happy to check out his other stuff. I just didn't, when I found out it was supposed to have, it was commenting on a political situation, is when, and I don't care about the auteur theory, so it's fine with me that he makes a great movie that I don't think is anything like what he thinks that it's about. But
yeah,
that's the only umbrage I take with this movie, is I just didn't, it seemed like a abstract aesthetic exercise on the nature of violence in cinema and not in the real world to me.
Yeah. And then another great thing about that era of British TV filmmaking is it's before satellite TV. Now we have streaming. Everybody has a million channels. That there are only a couple channels. So when he makes something like Elephant and appears in January of 1989, there are like 8 to 12 million people watching.
Yeah. Very powerful.
Which is hard to imagine today for any TV show that isn't live sports getting that kind of traction.
Just to clarify a little bit about Clarke's career, one of his movies doesn't follow, at least one of his movies doesn't follow in this that I know about, which is Rita, Sue, and Bobby 2, which is like a comedy about a threesome. So it's not, but it is, but if I remember right, that film is grittier, right? It's like working class. It's not.
I have not seen that one.
I haven't either, but that's what I've heard about it. That it is something that's popularly known for people who grew up in Britain around that time in the mid 80s. It would play pretty regularly. and that it's I guess closer to like, there was a time in the late 70s into the 80s where, I guess there was a time in the 70s where your comedies weren't Friends style, divorced from economic reality.
Right.
Britain is still
Clarke,
pretty good at that.
Clarke really liked the people, like I said, at the lower margins of society that he felt didn't get enough. And it was never he never did it in a poverty porn way that can sometimes be.
Speaking of Danny Boyle.
Yeah, it's interesting, Danny Boyle working with Alan Clarke.
And then later doing the Olympics?
Doing the South Asian movie, the film about the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire movie.
Slumdog Millionaire.
Slumdog Millionaire. That was the first time I ever heard the term poverty porn. Was seeing that one.
Yeah.
Paul Greengrass seems to be an acolyte of Clarke. We get a lot of the same.
Along with Harmony Korine, as Thomas mentioned, that was Thomas's entry into Clarke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The movie about the girl drug dealer in northern England, that was a big influence on Gummo.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
It is interesting with Clarke's background. He's from Liverpool, very lower middle class. That kind of stuck with him throughout his life, even when he was a successful director. Comparing it to Korine, who did not have that kind of background. And as his career has gone on, he's gotten less and less interested in it because it wasn't part of his foundational life.
Or he got his break and didn't die of cancer.
Although Alan Clarke might have been up his own butthole like Harmony Korine is these days had he gone on. I don't know. It's interesting to think what his career would have been like. I know after he died, there was all these retrospectives, which is how I discovered him. But what would he have done? What would he have directed? Would he become like a Mike Figgis, Alan Parker type?
I'm sorry, I was daydreaming about P.W.S. Anderson and realizing that they're remaking Mortal Kombat they've already remade it, but also the director of Barbarian and Weapons is going to direct a new Resident Evil.
Resident Evil, yeah.
Or a bit Resident Evil adjacent movie, which P.W.S. Anderson, he was ahead of his game.
Yeah.
What's the name of the movie about the junkie girl? Do you guys know?
The junkie girl?
That Arthur Clarke, Alan Clarke made.
It's called Christine, and not to be confused with the car that becomes sentient or alive or murderous.
He also made a movie called The Firm. Elephant has there's a ton of movies called Elephant.
It's interesting, to get those confused. Like, you're going to go watch The Firm. And instead you're like, why are there soccer hooligans? Why can't I understand what anybody's saying? Why is Gary Oldman in this? Why does he have an arsenal in his basement and his wife's completely cool with it?
Well, there's a line in The Firm where, not to give spoilers, but someone says, one of the soccer hooligans are like, well, if they take away football, which is soccer in England, if they take away football, we'll have cricket or we'll have snooker. And I think the point in Clarke's wider body of work is the specifics don't really matter, that this is about human nature and a human need for violence. And it really cannot just be bound to football teams or soccer teams.
Which is going to be the next Purge movie, I think.
Yeah. Or cricket.
Snooker.
Yep.
Oh, Grimacy.
Oh, no.
Full name, Uncle O'Grimacy. He was a mascot. Do you know about this, Ryan? I was hoping that Jack would be on for this part.
No, I don't.
Uncle O'Grimacy, America discovered this Irish treasure in the St. Paddy's month of March in 1975, and McDonald's hired him to deliver shamrock shakes. His nephew Grimace had been working for the clown for the previous 4 years, originally hired to play the heel to run off with milkshakes, kind of like a hamburglar with hamburgers. O'Grimacy I guess he has relatives, Grandma Winky and Aunts Millie and Tilly. They all hail from Grimace Island, except for him. He's actually from Shamrock, Ireland. Anyhow, he got canceled for a while, became uncanceled this year, so he can deliver shakes again under the Trump administration. Originally, he had a shamrock and blazoned vest and a shillelagh, but the actor playing the mascot allegedly in Philadelphia spoke out in favor of the Irish Republican Army. And they pulled O'Grimacy from the McDonald's land again until this year. But that is a bit of a rumor that seems to be based off of an Onion article when in fact he had pulled out a shotgun and shot Rocky Balboa's coach, Mickey Goldmill, and his brother-in-law, Paulie Pino, Adrian's older brother, and Paulie's unnamed robotic girlfriend, leaving them all for dead in the streets of Philly. So that is why there was no O'Grimacy for most of my life.
They had to strip all the context out to make it palatable to the television audience.
You might have asked yourself when I said shamrock emblazoned vest and shillelagh what a shillelagh is. A shillelagh is an Irish walking stick. It's a variant of the Heelay, which is a term for Lee's male sexual partners. A Heelay.
Oh my God.
For such an unnerving, sobering film as Alan Clarke's Elephant, well done not letting us get too mired in the muck.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about Funny Games at one point, which I don't think is exactly a funny film, but that's really a Jack film, and unfortunately it's not on the podcast.
No. So we're doing FX next week, right?
Yeah.
With the Bryans. The Bry-Bries. Brian Brown, Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
Guys, help me out here.
Brian Brown. Sexy. What a hot Aussie.
Yep. Alan Clarke, a good deal of his filmography, particularly the 80s period that I'm really familiar with. You can get on YouTube. The Internet Archive has a bunch of them, including Elephant and Contact and a few others.
It was only $2 on iTunes, and I've already watched it twice, and I feel like I'm gonna watch it again. It is only 40 minutes. So
yeah.
And despite the tough subject matter, I don't think any of us said, but I found it to be riveting for as simple as it is. I mean, I found it when I about halfway through and I realized it was going to be the same thing over and over again, I was like, maybe I should turn this off. I definitely don't want to watch this again. And then it got over and I watched it again a couple hours later.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about sequencing and how important it is in this movie. It's like putting together an album to have an arc, even though they're all 3-minute songs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to imagine this movie in any other sequence than it is. Particularly that the ending is so grim. Just the two guys and then the guy standing there and then one guy. It's about as brutal and sobering a movie as you will ever see.
Yeah.
And invigorating in a cinematic way because it is the steady cam work, the wide framing, the abandoned landscapes, either city or the soccer field, are astonishing. It's like being on another planet.
Yeah, I think that the film you could watch in almost any order as long as you left the opening, the ending, and the soccer field.
Yeah.
Because that soccer field does open up the film in an interesting way where you don't know if there's going to be a shooter that's going to be entering or it hasn't locked in fully that this is always going to be the same case. And it comes in about right about halfway.
Yeah. And then someone talks. You're like, oh, are people going to start talking now?
Yeah.
No, they don't.
And I wonder how much, if Elephant, the Van Sant version would be better with less dialogue or no dialogue.
See, yeah. Well, we already know how I feel about that, but it is a provocative question.
Yeah. And Clarke does explicitly say in that BBC morning show that the central metaphor of the elephant is the first couple days you have an elephant in your living room, it's like, what the fuck? There's an elephant in my living room. But then after 26 years, you're like, yep, there's the elephant. You just sit down, go about your business. Not at all Gus Van Sant's reading of it, which is still pretty funny.
He's a funny guy, that GVS.
Oh yeah, he's a laugh riot. Is that it? We done? The elephant?
Go see it and then argue about it with your friends.
Uh-huh.
Death to the auteur theory. Let's go.
What's the best track off the White Stripes album, Elephant?
Oh, is that Have Girl You Have No Faith in Medicine on it?
Sure.
Love that one.
Sing us a few bars. Sing us out, man.
Oh, girl, you have no faith in medicine. Oh, girl. There you go.
I don't end every episode like that.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. See you guys next week for FX. Woo! Special thanks to Ryan for the theme song. Special thanks to Jack.
They follow Walker down South American way. It got squibby, sticky, messy when they got there that day. Peyton lost his love and so he made a face. Django met a dentist, but big holes in little brains. Montoya's chest exploded, somehow wasn't the cocaine. And there were squibs when they died. There were squibs when they died. Squibs when they died. There were squibs when they died. Yeah, they made a big mess, and then they died.
In the Schumacher season?
Yeah, we're not there yet. So he's a geezer, right? Yeah, we're not there yet.
You have no faith in medicine.
Yeah, we're not there yet.